welcome to Tracy Momi Reads. I am back again with another video. How is it the end of May already? It's like May came, said, hey, how y'all doing? I'm not gonna stay long. And then it got right on up out of here, okay? Wow, end of the month already. But that means the beginning of summer now, because my daughter, she's out of school. She got out last week. So no more early mornings unless I choose to. First week, I have just been sleeping late and, catching up on my rest. So I am looking forward to some downtime as we head into her last year of high school, which that is so true what they say about the days being long, but the years being short. I'm feeling that more and more as I get older. Anyway, last Friday of the month. So today, I noticed something when I was going through the app that I have on my phone where I, record like my books and my thoughts and all that kind of stuff to track the stuff on my phone. And I noticed that I have read several books by some of the same authors, like let's say, for example, Alice Feeney. I've read a lot of her books, and there are several other authors, where I've read a lot of their books. So, I think the reason for that is because if I read a book by an author, and if it's my first book by them, and it's really good, I'm going to go down the rabbit hole. It's like, oh, what else did this person write? Because you know what they're capable of. So the likelihood that you're going to get a good story is pretty high, right? So today I'm going to be doing that trend. First, last, fave, where I mentioned the first book that I read by a particular author, the last book that I read by them, and then my favorite book. And, it may be one and the same where, the favorite is either the first or the last that I read by them. And every book that I'm mentioning, I'm pretty sure that I've done like a review, except for maybe one or two, but you can check, just search on my page if there's a particular book that I mentioned and you want to know more of my thoughts on it, because I'm going to try to get through this, relatively, quickly, because I picked 5 plus a bonus, and, I can go off on a tangent, okay? But we're going to try to keep it, under 20 minutes here. So anyway, the first up is Kennedy Ryan. The first book that I read by her was actually Real. And it is a story, about the behind the scenes, not only production, but also love story of a woman. She's an actress, and this is her first, film role, and the director of the film. And I really enjoyed that one. The last book I read by Kennedy Ryan is ironically a bridge between Real and her latest book, which is called Score. I think it's like the second book in the series, but she had like a shorter story called the Close Up, and I read that one, and it was really good. It was very steamy. So if you read that one, just be forewarned. However, my favorite book by Kennedy Ryan was actually a part of her trilogy, the Skyland series, and it's the last book in the series, Can't Get Enough. And I loved every aspect of that book, because Hendrix was the most cynical about love, in a traditional sense, but she still supported her friends fiercely. So to see like love actually happen for her and the way that it did, it was really beautiful. So that was my favorite book by Kennedy Ryan. Okay, next up, Mitch Albom. I've read so many books by Mitch Albom. I want to say, he has a lot of books out, so I won't lie and say I've read all of them, but I feel like I've read half of them, okay? The first book that I ever read by him was The Timekeeper, and I read this one eons ago, but it still kind of lingers in my mind. And as the title implies, it was a story about time, how as humans we waste time, yet we never have enough of it. It was very, very good. The last book I read by Mitch Albom was the book Twice, and it was a little nod to time as well, because the main male character got the opportunity to redo moments from his life. Now, as far as my favorite, like I said, I've read so many of his books and have enjoyed them all. It's just, kind of hard to pick, but there was something about The Stranger in a Lifeboat that I just couldn't shake. So that has to be my favorite by him. Not only was it like allegorical, but it also had some unexpected elements, like it was a little thriller, a little mystery, a twist. But he still delivered what you expect from him by way of like a moral or a mantra that can be applied to life. The thing that I love about Mitch Albom's books is that all of his stories have this element of hope and faith without being preachy. I feel like he simply offers up different perspectives for you to think about. And that's why I really enjoy his books. Okay, next up is Tayari Jones. The first book I ever read by her was Silver Sparrow. That was a while back, but I remember that one and the connection there. And I felt that it was really good. And I read An American Marriage, which, unpopular opinion, I didn't think was all that great. I didn't really enjoy it that much. However, the last book I read by her, which is also my favorite at this point, is Ken. And that just released earlier this year. And I just felt it was just such a heartwarming story of, friendship and found family. But if I'm being honest, that ending, it did piss me off a little bit. It pissed me off. But I feel like that's a mark of a great storyteller, because they make you care so much about the story and so much about the characters that when anything happens that you don't want to happen, you feel a certain kind of way about it. And Ken definitely did that. Okay, next up is S.A. Cosby. First book I ever read by him was Razorblade Tears. I read Blacktop Wasteland. That was the last book. But I also read King of Ashes, even though that was the last book he wrote. I kind of, read them out of order, because he's also another author that I'm going down a rabbit hole with. I have a couple of books on the shelf that I haven't gotten to by him as well. But out of the three that I have read by him, because last year was my first time reading any of his work. But out of those three, Razorblade Tears, Blacktop Wasteland, and King of Ashes, the first book, Razorblade Tears, still is the contender, okay? I mean, that book was I just thought it was amazing. It was like every single element I enjoyed, from the redemption arcs to the revenge plot. I felt like I was on that journey with Ike and Buddy Lee. I was like, where we going next? How are we going to handle this? What are we going to do? And I think I read that book, I want to say, within a day. I had a hard time putting that one down, even after it was all said and done. Speaking of that ending, I mean, another one that broke me, but I made peace with that one because you kind of saw the writing on the wall, but I still was like, no. I mean, and I think that was, and maybe I'm just getting soft about old age, because I've read a lot of books. And it seems like only here within the last year or so have I read any that have literally driven me to tears. And that was one of them. I just did not expect to have such a visceral reaction to that ending. It was crazy. I really cannot wait to see this one. I don't know. I know it got adapted, but I don't know if it's going to be a TV series, which that will make more sense for the build-up. Because I feel like sometimes with movies, unless you have that budget and have some big names behind it, you're going to need a little bit longer runtime to be able to really kind of get all the elements out of there. Whatever they do, they better do it right, because I'm looking forward to this one. And it's one of my favorite books. So fingers crossed they get that adaptation right. Next up is David Ellis. The first book I read by him was Look Closer. This one was so twisty. I mean, this one got me out of a reading slump, because you had to really be paying attention to see what was going on, even though it's not even revealed till maybe midway or latter part of the book, but it still kept me like, okay, what is happening here? Okay, woman, so if he's so and so, or what are they doing? So that one, it really got me focused, The last book I read by him was a book called Lies He Told Me. And this one, again, and I'm seeing the pattern here. There was a lot of moving pieces. In this one, to be honest, I feel like some of the stuff could be left out. However, just like Look Closer, it kept me on the edge of my seat, flipping, wondering, where is he going with this? What's happening next? Is this person the person that they're talking about? And I love stories like that keep you having these theories, about what's going on, who's going to end up being the person that did the thing or whatever. But I will say, I really like the way that one ended, okay? But my favorite book by David Ellis so far has been The Best Lies. And it was I just felt like it was just such a cleverly written story with, all the pieces were stitched together perfectly. That was so intricate that if you pull the string and it starts to unravel, you can see how everything's connected, each thread to, because some stories you read, even after it's all said and done, you're like wondering, okay, what did that have to do with anything? Or why did the author mention that? Whereas with a lot of his stories, and specifically with Best Lies, you can see how every little detail mattered and how he circled back on them and let you know, okay, this is why I told you about this, because this is this and this is that. And that to me is, sometimes I enjoy that more than a big shocking twist, like a one and done. I like several things that we get along the way that tie back to something you thought had no relevance at all. I think that that's really, really clever when authors do that. Okay, so those were the 5 main authors I want to talk about. I have so many other. I've read a lot of Alice Feeney books. I've read a lot of Freida McFadden books. I've read, a lot of other authors, Steve Kavanaugh, but those are the 5 that I wanted to mention today. But I do have a bonus one because I'm sure y'all noticed that somebody is missing. And the bonus, I have to do this honorable mention of Tia Williams. She has a new book coming out in about 10 days, in June, I think it's June 9th. And it's called The Misconnection, which I already know I'm going to end up loving because Tia Williams is an auto-buy author for me. Auto-buy. She has a book coming out, I'm buying it. And I didn't want to include her in the first last Fave until after I read this one because, I want to come back and probably talk about that as well. But my first book by Tia Williams actually was a book called The Accidental Diva. It was published in 2005, and that's when I read it back then. That was 20 years ago. 20 years. This woman has been in the game a long time, okay? And me personally, I feel like that she's underrated, and she needs to be talked about way more than she is. Especially more than a lot of these authors out here that are getting adaptations of their books. Every other week you see a TV show or a movie based on their books, But we all know what that's all about. Anyway, her writing, I just feel like it's amazing. It's so her characters, they jump off the page, she has you rooting for them. You get invested in the story. You actually care about the outcome. You can envision her settings and, the things that she talks about, in vivid detail. It's all just so palpable, And I've read all of her books, not just some of them. I have read all of her books, even I think I have one of them on my shelf. She had a 2-part teen young adult series. I even read that, The It Chicks. So when I say that I'm a fan and that I go way back and I don't feel like this woman has disappointed, I'm serious about that, right? If I had to choose a favorite at this point, having not read The Misconnection, it would definitely be A Love Song for Ricky Wilde. It still gives me chills thinking about that book. I just have so many books to read that I'm not a big fan of going back rereading stuff. If I have active books on my TBR, I've gone back and read passages of books that, I can remember being funny or touching or whatever. But as far as reading a whole entire book, no. However, I do feel like A Love Song for Ricky Wilde is a book that I probably will revisit and reread sometime in the near future, because I just, when you finish a book and you just want to sit with it for a while, then you kind of transition into something new or whatever. But I feel like if I read that book again, knowing what I know and having some fresh eyes, that it probably will be an even better experience, because that book for me, I have a lot of tropes and elements in books that I see a pattern that I read, and that book had them all. We're talking about like the immortal love piece, right? The magical realism that deals with time and timelines, the swoony main male character, the fiercely independent female main character, steamy relations, and I live for good banter, like funny, sarcastic banter in books. And that book had every single element. So yeah, I definitely think I'm gonna have to revisit that one. Okay, but I am looking forward to her next release. So yeah, so those are just some of the books by some of the authors that I've read multiple, pieces of their work, and my first, last, and fave from each one. If you haven't read any of the books that I mentioned, or if any of the books that I've mentioned were your favorites, let's talk about it in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure that you like this video. And if you have not taken the opportunity to subscribe to my channel, please, please, please go ahead, do it now. And go ahead and share, share the link to this with somebody who you think may enjoy this video or the content that I'm providing. You guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you next week. Bye.